In the scripture, it is described that there are 4 important yugas: Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, and Kali Yug. In Satyug, the divine and the demonic live on different planetary systems, and war between them is intergalactic warfare. The example is that of Hiranyaksha and Varaha Avatar, which is a full-fledged intergalactic warfare. In Treta Yuga, the divine and the demonic live in different countries, different land masses. And thus, the battle that takes place is really an international battle. So you have in the Ramayana, which occurred in Treta Yuga, Ram, who is in Bharat, and Ravan, who is in Lanka. So they have a war between themselves, and there is a war between nations. In Dwapar Yuga, the divine and the demonic are in the same country. So much so that it is a war which is practically a civil war. And in the case of Krishna, it's an internecine conflict, where Krishna battles with Kamsa in Mathura. In Kali Yuga, it is said that the divine and the demonic are not in different planetary systems. They are not in different countries. They're not in the same country. They are in the same person. So within you and within me, there live the divine and the demonic qualities. And this war takes place between the divine and the demonic within us. You have the example of Samudra Manthan, where the Devas and the Asuras, they battle it out as they churn the Samudra and perform the Samudra Manthan. The Samudra Manthan, of course, is the Manthan of the mind. And from there emerge wonderful things, at the same time, terrible things. So, this chapter which we are doing now, which is chapter 16 of the Bhagavad-Gita, is an important chapter because it makes us aware of the divine qualities that lie within us and the demonic qualities that also reside within us, which are constantly striving to overcome the divine qualities. Nonetheless, all men and women are not created equal. They are not created equal because some are born of light and others are born of darkness. They carry their prarabdha with them from their previous birth, which is that the gunas that they have cultivated in previous lives are carried forward to this life. So if you have cultivated and performed activities that are conducive to sattva guna, you are born with divine qualities. And those who are born with Demonic qualities are those who have cultivated demonic qualities in previous lifetimes. So in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, Ma sucha sampadam daivim abhijato si Pandava. Don't worry, O Arjun, don't grieve. You are born with divine saintly qualities. So I say this to you because if you were not born with saintly and divine qualities, you would never be listening to the Bhagavad-Gita. So don't worry, grieve not, O listeners, because you were born with saintly qualities which have drawn you to hear the Bhagavad-Gita today. Before we go on to the saintly qualities or the divine qualities that are described in chapter 16, I would like to go back to chapter 13 and verses 8 to 12, where Krishna says in chapter 13, 8 to 12, Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa shantir arjavam Acharyopasanam saucham स्थैर्यम आत्म विनिग्रह इंद्रिय अर्थेषु वैराग्यम अनहंकार एव च जन्म मृत्यु जरा व्याधि दुख दोषनु दर्शनम असक्तिरनाभिष्वंग पुत्र दारा गृहदिषु नित्यं च समचितत्वम इष्टनिष्ट पपतिषु मयि च अनन्य योगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्त देश सेवित्वम अर्तिर्जन संसदि आध्यात्म ज्ञान नित्यत्वम तत्व ज्ञान अर्थ दर्शनम एतज ज्ञानम इति प्रोक्तम अज्ञानम यदथो अन्यथा. So in these verses 8 to 12 in chapter 13, Krishna is describing the qualities of one who has knowledge. Knowledge is not something you possess, it is also manifest in your internal state. And those who have knowledge have all these 20 qualities described therein. So then you might ask, hey, if he's already done this from 8 to 12 in chapter 13, why in chapter 16, 1 to 3 again, Krishna is stating these qualities, and this time 26 qualities from texts 1 to 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitah Danam Damascha Yagnascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodas Tyaga Shantirapaisunam Daya Bhutishva Aloluptvam Mardavam Ahir Rir Achapalam Teja Kshama Dhriti Saucham Adraho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. So here Krishna is describing the qualities of those with divine, who are born with divine qualities. Fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion and vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy and hatred, and the passion to honor these qualities, O son of Bharata, they belong to divine men, godly men endowed with divine nature. So here, Krishna gives 26 qualities. But if you study carefully 13.8 to 12 and 16, 1 to 5, you will discover something very unique. Although there is some overlap between them, like Arjavam, Ahinsas, etc., you will find that in chapter 13, 8 to 12, Krishna describes the inner cognitive structure of one who is qualified to distinguish between Kshetra and Kshetrajna and therefore move on to Bhakti. Whereas in texts 1 to 3 of the chapter 16 of the Bhagavad-Geeta, you will see that here Krishna describes the observed behavioral qualities of those people who are having divine qualities. So one is the inner structure of the mind, which is seen in 13.8 to 12. In chapter 16, it is essentially the social behavior, the external behavior that becomes manifest of people who have these divine qualities. It's important to understand how all these originate. And because the Bhagavad-Gita is a syncretic fusion of multiple philosophies, the six darshanas of the Vedas, that include Yoga, Sankhya, and Vedanta, I must share with you a little bit of Yoga. In Yoga, and you will find that everything begins with avidya. What is avidya? Avidya is explained as that which is ignorance, the inability to see permanence and impermanence, how they differ. And more so, you start seeing permanence in impermanence. You see nityam in anityam. So that which is temporary, you see it as real. And because you see the temporary as real, your entire value system shifts. Therefore, you see joy in things that are the cause of sorrow. You see joy in the causes of sorrow. You see sukham in that which actually produces asukham. And you see purity in those things that are essentially compounded and impure. So because you see permanence and impermanence, you change your orientation from being focused on God, and you begin your focus on the things that are changing around you, which you falsely believe are impermanent, are going to be permanent, but actually they're all impermanent. Everything that you believe that the world has, which you desire, this is all a part of nothing other than an illusion of permanence. So the world is constantly changing. And because the world is constantly changing, when out of ignorance you give it reality, you meet with suffering. And because the world is constantly changing around you, you seek to find that in this torrent of changing circumstances, this river of changing circumstances, you want something to hold on to, some pillar to hold on to. And you create what we call as asmita. Asmita is the illusion that although the world is changing, within you there is something that is not changing. And that which is not changing, which you believe is going to be permanent, is what we call the autobiographical self. And because of this autobiographical self, everything that adds on to this autobiographical self, that strengthens that sense of self, you love. So you produce rag. And that which threatens the sense of self, you call dvesha. You reject it or you hate it. And because you are so attached to the sense of self, when the time to leave this body comes, you have this clinging to this body, fear of death, and desire for continuity, which is abhinivesha, which brings about rebirth. Now, the stronger the avidya, the gunas that become activated are rajo and tamaguna. The weaker this avidya, the weaker is this asmita. So the weaker is your weaker is your sense of self, because you are acquiring knowledge. It automatically brings about a diminution of rajagun and tamagun, and sattvagun gains predominance. So when you engage in activities, we will see, as described in the scripture, we are cultivating sattva gun. We have no direct control over the gunas. When we try to control our own gunas, we actually meet with suffering. Mamai vamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana shastendriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So, you are struggling with your six senses that include your mind, because you are an infinitesimal fragment of God and you cannot overcome it. But by constantly cultivating activities that promote sattva gun, as recommended in the scripture, which is the final solution of the last verse of the 16th chapter, you gradually evolve by transcending the sense of self. And as you begin to transcend the sense of self, Rajagun and Tamagun become relatively suppressed or denied or attenuated, and Sattva Gun becomes predominant and active. So it's very simple. When you talk in terms of what is purity, purity is attenuation, extinction, transcendence of this autobiographical self, this sense of self, this I, me, and myself, this ahankara. As you transcend this ahankara, as you extinguish this ahankara, as you begin to weaken this ahankara, you move from Rajagun and Tamagun to Sattva Guna. And this is how one progresses spiritually. So Krishna here gives us these qualities which are both divine and demonic, because by giving you divine and demonic qualities, he is giving you a self-diagnostic test. Yes, because you're studying Bhagavad-Gita, you're born with divine qualities. But what are these demonic qualities lying within you that are seeking to find manifestation, and how do you avoid them? This is what this chapter is about. there are actually 3 sections to this chapter. The first section deals with the divine and demonic qualities. Then you have the anatomy of the demonic person, including an insight into the mind of the demonic person. And the third section deals with the ultimate fate of this demonic person and how one can find a remedy to overcome these demonic qualities. So these are the 3 sections that are there in this chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. So therefore, in 1 to 3, Krishna describes those qualities of the sattvic person, the divine person, the one with divine qualities, which he is born with because he has in previous lifetimes cultivated these divine qualities. And in text 4, he says, he is describing in brief the demonic qualities because they're going to be discussed in the second section in great detail. Dambo darpo abhimanascha krodha paryusham evacha ajnanam abhijatasya partha sampadam asuram. Damba, pride, darpa, arrogance, abhimana, conceit, krodha, anger, parusham, harshness, ajnanam, ignorance, abhijatasya, one who is born. Such a person, he says, is asuri sampadi, which is demonic qualities. Devi sampada vimokshaya nibandhaya suri mata masucha sampadam daivim abhijato si pandava. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demonic qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with divine qualities. So I say to this audience, you would not be listening to Bhagavad-Gita if you were not born with divine qualities. So these divine qualities are there within you. That's why you're listening to Bhagavad-Gita. But from time to time, because there is a constant battle within you of the divine and the demonic qualities, you feel that demonic qualities might take over. So with this, I conclude this section of the Bhagavad-Gita. The next time, we will go into greater detail about the demonic qualities. Dvau bhuto sargau lokesmin daiva asura eva cha daiva vistarasa prokta asuram partha me shrinu. So before he begins these in-depth explanation of the demonic qualities, he says there are 2 kinds of created beings. One is called the divine and the other is called the demonic. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demonic qualities. So with this, I conclude this section of the Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, which deals with divine and demonic qualities. Essentially, what I want to tell you is that both these qualities are there within you. These descriptions are not to be judgmental about other people. They are there for you to have a self-diagnostic tool so that you can see when divine qualities manifest and when demonic qualities manifest. I have also explained to you that in the 13th chapter, 8 to 12, the inner qualities of the within the mind are explained therein. Whereas in the 16th chapter, here Krishna explains the behavior, the social behavior and the observed behavior of a person who is having divine qualities. And also Krishna explains here that these qualities are those which you are born with. because in previous lifetimes you have cultivated these qualities. It's very important to understand that in truth, these qualities are your ground base from where you can move on further towards attenuating the sense of self. For as your sense of ahankar, the ego, the self, your autobiographical self, as these become diminished, to that extent, the good qualities begin to manifest. So don't waste your time thinking that these are acquired only by reading self-help books. Self-help books may be useful, but in truth, these qualities are already within you, and they will become manifest as you diminish your ego and your sense of self. With this, I will conclude. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Thank you, Shantanu for today's session. My first question is what lessons from this chapter can help build good character?
The lessons you can learn from this chapter are, first and foremost, that both good and bad qualities lie within you. Divine qualities as well as demonic qualities lie within you. And that there is a constant battle that takes place between these divine and demonic qualities within your own mind, within your own self. The second point you should learn is that as you reduce your ego, as you reduce your ahankar, the advice in the Bhagavad-Gita is to reduce ahankar through the performance of yajna. Yajna means to perform things that are not for self. When you start doing things that idam na mama, it is not meant for me, it is meant for others, it is meant for God, your sense of self becomes attenuated. In this chapter, the conclusion, it is mentioned that these activities which reduce the sense of self are given in the Shastra, in the scripture. So if you act according to the scripture, if you reduce your sense of self and your ego, you will automatically bring out these good qualities. You don't have to think, how can I become more honest? How can I control my anger? How can I do this? No, nothing. Just reduce your ahankar and automatically all these good qualities will begin to manifest from within you.
And my second question is what can we do to control negative qualities like anger and greed?
Already the answer is given in what I've already said. To control negative qualities, remember God and forget self. And if you can't remember God and forget self because that is beyond you, then at least follow the scripture. At least follow the laws of the land and the laws of God. And when you do that, you are actually confining yourself to activities that are beneficial for society and for you.
Thank you so much, Shantoji, for today's session. And to all our viewers, if you liked it too, then don't forget to share this video with your loved ones. Also, stay tuned as we meet again on next Thursday at 8 a.m. for another session on the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna.
Right. Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.